And all right, we are back with another episode of Positive Influence here. I am Phil Locklear. You normally see me as Demon Phil. I'm trying to kind of get the name out there for Phil Locklear since I'm actually working on some other projects and want to get y'all to know that I'm actually human as well, not just a demon. I just, that's my side job. But we're going to get this going here very shortly. Want to go ahead and let everybody know I certainly appreciate everyone who has subscribed to the channel. Getting on here, I just want to remind everybody, please do so if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel. That way you don't miss out on the content that we have coming out here, and we get more eyes on our creators that are out here. Positive Influence was created for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to go ahead and get the light shown into the indie spotlight, even more so than it already is. And we're starting with this creator here tonight as well. We got Corey Hardiman here.
Hello.
Hey, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Hey, absolutely. Now, before we get started into all of the fun that we have on here and everything, get to know you a little bit, go ahead and let them know who you are, what you do, and where to follow you.
Oh, I'm Corey Hardiman, and I'm the writer-creator of Sister Mercy and the founder of Attic Door Comics. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Corey Hardiman, or also at Sister Mercy.
There you go. Easy to find with that. Now,
Absolutely.
you've got a project that's going on right now. We're going to be talking about that here very shortly. We want to kind of talk about, get to know you just a little bit, and then we're going to get to see some of your product that's out there as well. So we'll actually show some of the pretties are going to be coming out here. So everybody be patient with us on this one. Get through just a few minutes of this, and then we're going to start showing some of the pretties on the side while we talk and get to know Corey a little bit in the process. So I got to ask the all-important question is, I always talk about, the passion that you put into the projects that are out there as indie creators really shows more so than it does with some of the other industries because you have no outside, help with all this and everything. You're wearing all the hats yourself and everything. What is something that you've learned going through this process of building your IP that you have that's doing very well, by the way,
Thanks.
that you've actually, kind of improved on with every single campaign that you've had? What's the one thing that you've learned on there?
Well, when I first started making comics, I didn't know a thing about designing graphics or anything like that. I had a friend of mine that he helped me, build my first logos and built the template and stuff like that, and basically helped me create the first two comics and did all of the technical stuff. He's a comic book creator himself, so he didn't have the time to continue to do that. So he basically taught me what I needed to know. And I've just been kind of teaching myself as I've gone since, learning how to use, the graphics program to build the graphics for the Kickstarter and stuff like that. So my knowledge of that grows exponentially pretty much with every campaign. So
and that's great too, because it's always something that you constantly want to be, teaching yourself and exploring different things to expand. And like I said, your IP is doing very well. And every time I see it, it's gaining more and more followers moving forward. So what are your feelings toward, what have you seen that's really stuck on there that you can definitely go, I know I'm going to have followers because of this X factor here, even though you want to build off of it, I'm sure, but what's the one X factor that really holds them in there?
Well, I think it's the thing that actually draws me to the indie comic book world as a whole is that creators, writers can, you're seeing their unwatered down creation. There's no overhead. There's a lot of overhead. There's no oversight, and there's nobody telling you, oh, you can't do this or that's going too far. It's up to that writer to decide if they're crossing any lines or if there are no lines to be crossed. So I love that. I love that I can open an indie comic and do that. So when I first started out, like Sister Mercy was not supposed. My original concept, she wasn't going to show any more skin than Wonder Woman. And then my first campaign was really, it was $5,000 goal. I've been going for 2 weeks, and I was at 2,500, and I was stuck. And so I started looking at the ones that were successful, and I seen that new variant covers seemed to be the go-to. So I messaged my artist and asked him to do one up really quick, and he did. And instantly we hit the 5,000 right after that. So I realized that was something that the audience was really after. So we started changing the script as well. And actually at that point, not only did we do the new variant cover, but that's when I got him to scrap the second half of the script because we'd only drawn the first 12 pages. And I rewrote the last 12 pages and just took it in a different direction, which seemed to really work for the story too. So we've been going with the extreme content, but not at the cost of sacrificing the story for it. Yes, it's gratuitous, and sometimes there's a lot of it, but it always advances the story in one way or another.
Yes, and I will attest to that as well, because there is some NSFW things that are out there that it's known as the cheesecake that you put on the,
Mhm.
the cover has absolutely nothing to do with the bulk of the story on there. The thing with yours, though, that I've noticed in my personal of reading some of mine that I have and everything, is that the cover has something to do with the inside in there, but it is not the main premise. That's the biggest part about it. Is don't think that because you're seeing something on the cover, that's what this entire book is about. It will have elements of it, but the story is what is great about this. And that's what we're going to talk about next, is the actual storyline, because now we're going to show the pretties, because we have to. I can't be the prettiest thing up here because that's just not going to happen. Uh, but with Sister Mercy, now, first off, I want to let everybody know that's watching this thing, because I know I'm going to start getting these messages, because it never fails on these things. Yes, I know my 4 rules. Yes, I know no religion, no politics, no trauma, no negativity. And yes, I know this one has religion in there. So we're fine with that. I've already expressed that and talked about that. So nobody caught me on anything. We're good. Just throwing that out there. And I'm going to tell you right now, if this is a religion, I would turn over. I'm just throwing that out there right now.
The Church of Sister Mercy. It's got a ring to it.
Exactly. But you've got, like I said, you've got an amazing IP that you've created out of this thing, and it's grown so much. And you mentioned that by switching over to the NSFW and starting to do, some of the covers that look like that to draw more of the attention, that way, and then add a little bit of it into the story. I got to ask, how did you come up with the storyline for this in the first place? Because at first it seemed like something that would be a 1, maybe to 3 issue, setup on this. And it seemed like there was almost no more meat to get out of this thing. And you're up to your 8th one on your campaign right now. And
Yeah.
from what I've seen through 6, it has been a meat after meat after meat in there. So it's got a lot to it.
It's funny actually how it's almost like everything was all ready to go in my so I was at work one day, basically the creation of Sister Mercy, and a friend of mine from the other side of the country messaged me, and at the time it was my goal to write a novel, and she had said she knew that I wrote and she drew, and she said, well, let's make a comic book together. So this was prior to that. I'd never had any intention of doing so. And I said, okay, how about a nun in the desert with schizophrenia, but it's actually the voice of God, the post-apocalypse, and it just like, blah, everything was just ready. I required very little thought to get that initial spark going. It was almost like it was just pre-made and just ready to come out. And after that, every issue just seems to, I almost knew right from the beginning what the entire story arc was. I knew the ending was one of the very first things I thought of. And it's just basically, it's been so easy to write. It's just, it's almost like the story's just already there. I just have to kind of give it a way out.
And I mean, as we're going through, we're looking at some of these absolutely gorgeous covers that are on here. And the thing is, the covers are actually kind of telling a part of the story as well,
That's
if
right.
you're following along. So if you're just looking at it like, oh, that's shiny and it's pretty and it needs to be in my collection because it's got that, I'm going to bust that myth one more time. You get these things in, it's amazing. You open them up. I know they open. I'm throwing that out there. They have more art and more story inside there than just on the cover. So I'm just throwing it out there for all of you people that get these and automatically slab them and throw them up there and never take a look at them. There's stuff in there. So busting that myth right now.
Right on.
But I mean, they're gorgeous. And like I said, they tell the story as you're going along. So for those of us that have been kind of following and attempting to stay right on top of this the whole time, you can definitely see where you're leading with the covers to those of us that are following. And then new people, it draws them in and they go, wait a minute, now I see where you're going with 1 through 7 on this. Now it's leading up to this moment. What's happening? How do you come up with the concept of actually going to that level? I mean, you're already up to 8 is being produced right now. I don't know how far you've written this thing out, but I can only imagine.
Well,
So how do you come up with a concept of actually having the artwork to kind of tell the story for you?
Well, this is the issue 8 is the conclusion to the first story arc. So this is the end of that whole first bit. And when it comes time for covers, I usually just look at the story and I look at the settings, the major props that are in there, and just try to incorporate something instead of just having, just a regular pose of, character in A and pose B with a white background, right? So, and sometimes I also will, converse with the artist. So a perfect example this time around, Well, actually, I'll mention it when we get to it, but there's a cover coming up where it was a very, very last minute thing, like a week before launch. And I just felt like I needed one more cover. And so I talked with the artist, and he didn't like my initial idea. So we bounced things back and forth. We ended up on something totally different, but it's a beautiful, beautiful cover. So, inspiration comes from all directions.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, this one is just a fun cover. This, of course, is not, storyline inside and that kind of thing, but it's got that comical. It almost has like uh, I don't know, almost like a heavy metal version of that, or the one with the guy with the red hair. I can't remember right now. The big nose, big ears. Wow, I can't think of the name of the magazine right now. I'm gonna get murdered for that one in comments. I can see that one coming. If y'all get that one, let me know. We'll see if I can get you a prize for knocking me off of my stool on that one. But it does have a very fun featured look on this one, almost like if it was the Sunday funnies type thing.
That's right. That one doesn't necessarily capture any of the feel of the inside of the comic at all. That was Jason Hare. I love his work, and he had drawn a cover that had a similar vibe to this. And I had commented on it and said, I would really, really like something along those lines as well. And he came out with that, and he really just absolutely nailed it. Like, I love this cover a lot. Part of me would almost like to see a whole issue of Sister Mercy drawn in that quirky, humorous, fun style, right? It's not going to happen. The story's takes itself a bit too seriously for that at times. Yes. But that being said, it's nice to see, on a cover, those potential different versions that were from, a multiverse, so to speak.
Well, you never know. You might get to a point where that might be an ash can, that you could offer at some point with just, 4 to 8 pages or whatever in there of this kind of style, just to have some fun with it, at a certain level. That would be fun to get to, just to see a different perspective.
That's actually not a bad idea. In Sister Mercy issue 4, I believe, the last 4 pages are a standalone short poem story. So yeah, something like that in that style actually would work really cool.
And then, of course, we've got this one here. Now, this one caught my attention because, of course, Sports Illustrated, is known for the swimsuit issue. So why shouldn't Sister Mercy go ahead and get their own, Sports Illustrated version of the swimsuit issue?
Now, that's a beautiful cover by C.B. Zane and Gat Melvin, but it's not what it ended up. It's not, the final product is not what I originally had in mind when I started, because it was CB did an absolutely amazing job, and Gat, as they always do. But what originally that was going to be was a mock magazine cover called Catholic Monthly, with some blurbs down the sides about religious questions or whatever that you would find in a Catholic magazine, but it would be Catholic Monthly swimsuit edition. But as I was trying to put that together, I was thinking, I don't know if I might be stepping on some toes, by actually drawing out the word Catholic out there. I might, give people the wrong impression. So, or the right impression, I should say.
Yeah, you never know. Tomato.
I decided just to make it a Sister Mercy swimsuit edition.
There you go. Now, as far as we've been talking about the covers and everything to kind of show some of the interiors, this proves it right here that you're not losing anything by going ahead and opening these things up and starting to delve into the story and into the art. I mean, this is absolutely gorgeous the way that this is set up, and it's got a very, it's not even the 90s feel. It's got more meat to it than that. It's got more of the colors actually draw you in a lot more. The fact that you actually go outside of the bleed lines so much on the panels is amazing. It gives it that 3D effect to where you are now part of this universe. How difficult was it to come up with this concept to keep going with this look of the art?
Well, to start with, I've just been blessed to work with Ricardo doing lines and Lunyo Alves doing the colors. I came across Lunyo in issue 5 when I was looking for a new colorist. And as soon as I seen the type of work that he did, I knew it was exactly the type of work that I wanted for Sister Mercy. And he's just been hitting it, every issue since then. So it really helps to give the world, I find the world is growing more into the world that I see in my head with the later issues. It's really capturing that feel with the sky is always red, that dark polluted sky, and the coloring really seems to bring the world to life.
And it definitely does. And I wanted to bring up also, because even though we're going with 8, this one caught my attention simply because you look for something that has a different concept than you've seen on some of the other colors covers. There's so many that are so similar in one way or another. Poses especially are very similar on some things. Even that pose that she has is very similar to quite a few others. But the fact that the the hand of the souls and everything there that is just oozing around all over behind her, that is awesome to be able to come up with that. Was that something you came up with the concept on that, or is that something that the artist kind of came up with and you molded with, or how did that happen?
It was so to start with, I have absolutely zero drawing ability. To quote, I can't draw a stick figure. So I had the idea. I wanted her standing in front of this giant hand that was made up of all of these bodies that were melted together, which is something that happens within the story. So I did a Google search for woman standing in front of hand, because I knew I couldn't even sketch out something to get the idea across that I wanted. And I found an image that was kind of basically what I thought of. And I sent that to CB, and I just said, something like this, only the hand is made out of, basically people. And he, oh man, he really nailed it. And actually, one of the things that he did on there, which is particularly cool, is that the faces of all of in the hand, you'll see a bunch of faces. There's like 7, 8, 9 faces in there. Mm-hmm. They're all the cast from The Office. That was his own little Easter egg thing. He actually has a little legend of which faces line up to which characters. So a few of them you can kind of make out, but I thought that was just an absolutely awesome touch.
That's great to have those little nuances in there that nobody really knows until you really look at it. Because until you mentioned that, I had no idea. And now that I'm looking at it, I'm starting to go, yep, I see that one. Yep, I see that one.
Yeah. Yeah, great stuff.
That is great. Now, you've got one other thing that I wanted to bring up is that you've actually got a collaboration that you're doing as well, correct?
Yeah, with Armin the Sands Lunar Smoke. And he reached out to me 2 issues ago. I think this is the 3rd time now we've done a crossover print. Mm-hmm. So anybody that backs both projects will get the crossover print from him on the Lunar Smoke side.
Awesome.
Yeah, he did, and his artist, I can't remember the name right off the top of my head, but I absolutely love that picture. That's a gorgeous, gorgeous picture.
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, and it's got the feel of both of the projects on there in one print, instead of having it where you just kind of mash it up and go, I hope it works, by having, because they got to have the certain look themselves.
That's right. Yeah.
They did a really good job of putting that together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, of course, this campaign is for Chapter 8. This is the last tomorrow. Like you said, this is to finish up the arc on here. Mm-hmm. How far out have you written this, or can you say?
I'm going to have to say no comment on that right now, because I don't want to spoil anything in this story.
Okay.
I don't even want to say if there's going to be a next issue. I can say my next 3 Kickstarter campaigns are not going to be in issue 9 of Sister Mercy. Up next will be Our Lady of Crows. I'm going to do an omnibus of this, and then Hope and Sin #2. So This is the end for a little while. Okay. But obviously, the way I'm talking, there's plans for something down the road, but I don't want, it's going to be so much different. It's just like, yeah, it really switches things up in the future. I'll put it that way without trying to give away too much.
Oh, absolutely. No, there's no problem with that. Now, you mentioned about Hope and Sin, and I was going to bring that up before we go ahead and shut everything down here in a little bit. But with Hope and Sin, let everybody know the premise of what you have on there and how that kind of expanded a lot faster than you thought. Because I remember whenever you launched that thing, how excited you got on how fast that thing was putting up some numbers for you on there.
Yeah, that's one of my top Kickstarter campaigns, which really surprised me, since it was a #1 to come out of the gates like that high. It ties in with the world of Sister Mercy. I introduced those 2 characters in issue 5. So Sister Mercy, as I've said, has that adult feel. I would call Sister Mercy a hard R. Whereas Hope and Sin is XXX. Like, people have responded well to that type of subject matter. So I thought, okay, well, Hope and Sin, like Sister Mercy, like I said before, story first. Hope and Sin, yes, but at the same time, that really has to be there, And Sister Mercy, there are some issues where there's a little bit of background nudity. Like, there's nudity in every issue. Sometimes it's just a little bit of background nudity or whatever. Whereas some issues, it's more predominant. Hope and Sin, you're guaranteed to see something absolutely pushing the limits with every issue. Like, It's I sit there and think, okay, what is the most sexually offensive thing that I can think of? And after that's done, it's like, okay, now how do I top that for the next issue? Right. But at the same time, still advancing the story and the world, and it still fits within those characters, the content, right? It is exactly up the alley of what these characters would be up to. So the first issue of Hope and Sin is a prequel to issue 5, Sister Mercy, where they're first introduced, is how they end up at that point. Issue 2 is going to run concurrently with 5, 6, 7, and it's the two stories are going to run side by side, but it's going to pass Sister Mercy and continue on the story of that world in that comic.
Nice, very nice. And I definitely want to kind of jump on the fact that you said, you know, the story is first in Sister Mercy, and you said that first, and then of course the artwork, you know, with the NSFW, anything in there is a secondary thing if necessary. But with Hope and Sin, you're being very flat out there saying that it's going to be in there.
It is.
How do you come up with, like, are you working with the same artist on the interiors on this, or is it a different artist, or how are you kind of melding that mindset to go ahead and say, this is the predominant on here now, we're going with storyline as a secondary, but it's still got to be fluid, no pun intended?
Yeah, no, it's a completely different group of artists. Actually, the first issue of Hope and Sin is 2 stories. The first 12 pages were drawn by one artist, and that was the story of Hope. And the second 12 pages was drawn by another artist, and that was the story of Sin. But since I have so much material from Sister Mercy, and these characters have already been introduced, I have a lot that I can give to the artists to work with, right? So that they can create the same feel and the same same world. One thing that really helps is I do have the same colorist, so it does sort of give everything the same sort of feel. You look like you're looking at the same world when you're looking into the next issue.
And I definitely wanted you to mention that it was split that way, because I love the way that you did that, because it's a different perspective on each character because of the way that it's drawn on there. Even though it's the same colorist, you can get that feel that Hope and Sin are different characters in there because of the way that the art is done, 12 pages and 12 pages.
Exactly. Yeah. Now the second issue, that's not going to be the case with the second issue. It's going to be a full story, right? Again, it's a bit trickier writing this one where it's running concurrently with the Sister Mercy arc, because that wasn't originally the plan. So I sort of, it's definitely tricky writing, that's for sure. And I'm still kind of fleshing out, no pun intended, how I want it to go.
We love the no pun intended on here. We have fun with
that. Dad jokes all day long.
Hey, if you can't laugh, it's cry. We choose laugh in this industry. No, I mean, you've got a lot of great stuff that's happening in here with Sister Mercy, with Hope and Sin. You mentioned your other one that you're going to be coming out with, which should be the one that'll be right after this one, correct? The Crows?
Yeah, Our Lady of Crows. Now, and that one's going to be a completely different monster, a whole different world, a whole new story.
Now, is there something that is in your bucket list that's a grail item that you're like, I would love to be able to sit down and write such and such and have it in my name?
Oh, Moon Knight, easily. I would love to be able to write Moon Knight. He's been my favorite comic book character since I was, when most kids like Spider-Man and the Hulk and whatever, I was Moon Knight. And everybody's like, who is Moon Knight? Like, I swear, I was probably the only Moon Knight fan in like my province. Now everybody knows who he is and he's all popular, right? But yeah.
Well, some of the other characters are simple to read and everything. Moon Knight, you have to actually pay attention to what you're reading, because he flip-flops so much between his personalities. But the personalities are very detailed in whenever they do come out. I don't know how else to explain it, except that whenever they are out, they have a definitive trait to them that makes them them. So if you were able to write something like that with the way that you've been writing some of the other stuff, I'd be very interested to see something along those lines.
Oh, I'll tell you, that would be a dream come true for me. That's for sure. That or Dragonlance, actually. Not really. I mean, there are Dragonlance comics, but I love the world of Kryn and Dragonlance, and that would be the other thing on my bucket list. If they ever started publishing again, I have a trilogy I would absolutely love to write, but I think with the exception of this new book that came out, that's, because it's the founders of the world have decided to write a new book, but aside from that, they haven't been publishing new authors since like 2014, so hopefully that'll change up sometime.
Awesome. Now, one of the last questions that I want to ask leading into the end of this is, you've got your campaign up here that you've been working on. You've done 8 of these now for Sister Mercy alone.
9 if you count the collected edition.
Exactly. So you got a little bit of experience here.
That's right.
What is something that you've learned collectively that you've just been getting better and better on as you go along? Like you said, like when we talked at the very beginning about you didn't know about, how to do the graphics work and stuff. What is something collectively that you've learned on the campaigns themselves, marketing, whether it be promoting, whether it be, it could be fulfilling because that's a nightmare and a half in itself.
Yeah, the thing I've been learning the most about is actually sharing and gaining visibility, because that's always the trickiest thing, and that's always what you need to learn the most about, right? It's I always feel like a lot of people would want it if they just knew it was there. So it's just a matter of getting as many eyes on it as possible. So you have to walk the line between. I got a shadow ban on my issue 4 campaign, I believe it was. My issue 4 campaign is the only campaign that didn't do as good as the previous campaign. And that's because I was shadow banned for a week, but it was up for 3 or 4 days before I noticed it. So I couldn't understand why my traction had stopped dead.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
So I've learned since, how to try to avoid that, although I had a scare this morning when I thought it happened again. And plus I've used some of the other Nita Lanning. She's absolutely fantastic for helping promoting stuff. And I've used, some of these other people have just been really, really good at sharing and stuff like that. And that's where I've been putting a lot of my focus on trying to figure out how to get to as many eyes as possible.
Very nice. Now I'm going to go ahead. I'm fixing to give you full screen on this one, so you can go ahead and let everybody know why they need to get over there and pay attention to what's going on with this campaign. Before we do, I talk about this on my other show as well. I do this on this show with Positive Influence. We have 2 hashtags that I really push. Number 1 is Voice of the Indies. That was actually given as a name to me by Larry Higgins, which does Niobe Comics. But
this
I
is
would
next
not
province over.
exactly. But I would not take it as a personal name, because to me, Voice of the Indies is not a one-person name. That's a conglomerate. So with Voice of the Indies, that's why I push that it's more of the more people that get involved in this and the more people that push and share and shine the light out there, that's increasing the Voice of the Indies. And the best way to do that is the other hashtag, which is Power of the Finger, the correct one if you can. Hit that share button and get these things shared out. Everybody understands that not everyone can financially back everything that's out there. It can't be done. And everybody understands that, but it costs you nothing but a smidgen of your time to go ahead and use the power of that finger and hit that share button and get these things shared out. So I'm going to go ahead and give Corey full screen on this one. He's going to let you know why you need to go ahead and get the Voice of the Indies increased out there together by using the power of the finger and get on this campaign for Sister Mercy 8 before it's too late.
Well, we've been up for just a little over 2 days, and we've already passed 300 or past 400 backers. Actually, as of today, we've unlocked the first 2 stretch goals, and this is going to be the last time to get this Sister Mercy back issues. So it's you'll want to get on there and check that out. And not only that, but every time we do an update, we share a couple of other projects from other creators. Next update, I know Tom Hutchinson has a campaign out right now. We'll be dropping an update and a link to his stuff. And so it's always great to share out wherever possible, even if you're a creator, to share other products, whether you're a fan, whether you're a backer. It all helps. It's all great.
Awesome. So everybody needs to get over there. Take note of what's going on with Sister Mercy, because this is an IP that it started off with a bang. And I mean, this thing has gone almost nuclear as it's going through this, in a good way, of course, and just getting bigger as it gets along. So you do not want to miss the train on this, because it is passing by at a very fast rate. But Corey, I certainly appreciate you being on here for Positive Influence and going in and letting everybody know a little bit more about yourself, and of course with your project as well. But looking forward to seeing what you've got in the future as well, and would love to have you back on for the next campaign if you're interested.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
All right. Well, if that's the case, I'm going to go ahead and get to the part that I love the most about these shows whenever I finish up. I have one thing that I finish up with every single time, and I love it, and I won't change it for anything. Keep it indie, y'all.